Everyone talks about the SQE2 pass rate and the skills that you need to pass the exam, but no one talks about the reality of sitting the exam alongside your career and life just moving at a million miles per hour. I finished the assessments. They were tough, but if you're preparing for SQE2, if you're working full-time, part-time, if you're a full-time student, I'm sure you'll find something to help in this video. Here are 5 things I wish that someone had told me before I sat SQE2. I'm filming this video. I don't know if I've passed yet. I get my results later on, but irrespective of the results, if I had to do it again, this is some of the things that I would be incorporating. By that, I mean, there is actually, in my opinion, again, everything in this video is my opinion, there is a huge gap between SQE1 where you are choosing one of 5 answers. Is it 5 or 6? I don't remember, but you're choosing one of multiple options. With SQE2, it's a lot more like a driving test where you are physically in the car and Susan down the road has decided to walk out in the middle of the street where there is no pedestrian crossing. It very much feels like the knowledge that you have is useless if you don't actually know how to apply it. I do personally think that for SQE2, you need to have a far more greater understanding and grasp of how to practically use the knowledge, of course. I actually feel like, in my opinion, for SQE2, the functioning legal knowledge is way more important for SQE2 than SQE1. And that's because you genuinely just don't know what curveballs are going to come up with the client sitting in front of you, or if the judge asks you a specific question. And also, to be honest with you, even the written parts, I personally felt like if you don't know the law, there is no way that you'd be able to answer these questions. And I mean, not just the law, but how everything fits together to that client specific scenario. It's one thing to know the procedural steps of a hypothetical litigation situation, but do you know the pre-action steps when a client is asking for a summary, but they also have a set of circumstances, which means that some of the exceptions may apply or things outside of the rules may apply. Now, of course, there is this understanding that this is for a day one solicitor. They are not going to ask you extremely niche questions that nobody is able to answer or somebody 10 years PQE is supposed to answer. But you do need to have a very good steer on the functioning legal knowledge. And to be honest, I kind of wish I spent more time going over the functioning legal knowledge than I spent practicing. That's just my opinion. To me, it seemed really obvious, and to be honest, only really applies for somebody who is already working in a legal environment. But how you write to your clients or to your supervisor at work may be, more personal, especially if you've built a rapport with them, compared to what you would be writing in the exam. There is a skill in understanding the difference between I'm writing for an SQE2 exam versus real life practice. And again, that's because of several different things. Like, it needs to be standardized. There are lots of different sizes and types of law firms. I'm sure, the SRA has their own reasons for marking, etc. But I did notice, and this is something that I saw on Reddit, there was like a couple comments that I saw on Reddit of these students who took the exam. They worked in business law and they took the exam, and business law for their SQE2 exam was actually their worst performing subject. I do think the work side definitely helps. Of course, it's a professional exam. It's not just, do you know X, Y, and Z? But I do think you need to have a bit more formality and know how to write for the legal parts of the exam compared to normal practice, or compared to how you might write at work. I think if there's when I had any doubt, and this is like a tip more generally, if there is any doubt on how formal you should be, just be like a little bit more formal. It's better to be more formal than less formal, in my opinion. But like also and you might not do this at work, but you need to be extremely good at using plain English. I think sometimes, especially at work, you're speaking within your legal team. There's a lot of legalese flying around and, you know, acronyms that we all know. But like when you're writing, when you're doing, for example, client focused legal writing, you're giving client legal advice, you are going to have to know how to communicate very simply. And that kind of goes back to the first point, where if you don't already have a very good foundational understanding of a topic, it's going to be challenging for you to break that down into something simple that's digestible for somebody who doesn't work in the legal profession. Basically, if your client doesn't understand the advice, it doesn't matter how good your knowledge is. And I also think, just on a final point on this section, I also think SQE 1 definitely does not prepare you for that. I think SQE 1, you can basically just know the information, know all of the legal jargon, etc., etc. It is a skill to be able to break down a fee structure to a client, a restrictive covenant to a client, whether, you know, the process of buying or selling a house, or specific search inquiries that are actually of interest to the client. Is literally just, in essence, 2 days of 4 exams. I split them up. Of course, there's FLK 1 split into the morning and afternoon session, FLK 2 split into the morning and afternoon session. So to me, that's 4 mini exams. They were long, but only across 2 days, which was so tough. It was really tough. But having sat SQE 2, I'm realizing it gets harder. To be honest with you, I was so stressed out right before the exam. Like the week before, I was like, I've not done enough revision. You know, I know that there were several people who were sitting that exam and they, how can I say this? They had like months off to study and I did not have that much time to study. And then you have that in comparison to the way the exams are set up. So I think even if you're not anxious before the exams, to be honest with you, the way the exam environment is inherently stressful. And I do think that by the time the 3rd day came around of the written exams, so the first week is 3 days of written exams that are back to back. On day 3 of those written exams, I was done out. I was so tired. And I'm not gonna lie, I am kind of glad that somebody suggested that I schedule at least 1 to 2 days of recovery time between the last written exam for that week and the oral exams for the week after, because I was in like the first set. The oral exam started the week after on the Tuesday and I was tired. But I'm not gonna lie, in the time that I did study between those two, worked my butt off. I actually ended up enjoying the orals except for one of them. They were tough though, they were tough. And I know that there were things that I missed, but you know, it's fine. I tried my best and we'll see what the results come back with. But yeah, I think I wish I knew how to better reset my brain between the written exams and the oral exams, especially because you don't need to know business law for the oral exams. I'm glad that I did quite a bit of advocacy practice in between. I had a study buddy and I do not study with people, let me say that. But when you're in an exam environment where you quite literally have to be talking to an examiner, it's very helpful to have somebody who understands the program, who understands how it's been marked, how your assessment's going to be marked, to like test. So I did a lot of practice advocacy mocks. We literally went through the syllabus of everything that could come up for the advocacy exams. It was really tough, but I think I wish I just knew how to better get in the mindset of the exams, just because it's so dense. And I think the last thing that I want to say on this topic is you need to know how you are in that assessment center. And I said this for SQE1 as well, but I definitely think that if you're going to do an assessment obviously like at the assessment center, you need to know whether or not you're going in there and you're open to talking to people, or if you're like, no. But to be honest, you might say no and then get to the assessment center and meet some really nice people. I know that for the written exams, I met a cool bunch of people. They were so nice. And I met a cool bunch of people for SQE1 as well. Shout out to Kaplan Islington. That was really cool. But for the oral exams, I didn't talk to anyone. I was not trying to have a chin wag chat, nothing. Like, I needed to zone in because I knew that I didn't feel like I had the same amount of practice for the oral exam. So that's just my 2 cents. I just enjoyed my morning, and then when I got to the assessment center, I continued to study. So yeah. I think everyone who has sat SQE1 would know that it takes a lot out of you. By the time I finished SQE1, I think I said in my other video, I was exhausted to the point where I was falling down the stairs multiple times. I was genuinely struggling to stay awake. I just felt overall exhausted, and that feeling lasted for a while, like a couple months. And to be honest, just before I went into my 4-week intense study session for SQE2, I had a lot going on at work. That December caseload was high. I think all of that to say, like, for you, it might be something different. For you, maybe somebody has passed away, or there might be transitionings happening in your life, or family situations, or a friendship breakup, or an actual like relational breakup. Like, there are so many different things, or you're moving house. Like, there's so many different things that can happen whilst you're preparing for these exams. Life does not stop because you sat SQE2. And so I do think that I was so behind before I even opened a book properly to study for the exams. And it can be really easy to put yourself down and be in a really negative mindset. And I kind of did a little bit. Let me not say a little bit. I had a couple cries, a couple sad moments. I remember, oh my gosh, guys, I had a session, and the person asked me how I was, and I just literally broke down in tears. I was like, I was also really ill at the time. I think obviously stress aggravated my anemia. So yeah, there was just a lot going on there. I was like, I'm too tired to study. I literally don't have any energy. There's so much that I want to do, but I physically cannot. It was infuriating. But I also think that like all of the little things add up. Even though I didn't have, 4 months to study for this exam, I do think the bits that I did here and there kind of amalgamated and added up to something that led to a really good foundation when I did eventually have time to lock into SQE2. You genuinely just have to do what you can with the time that you have. I do think you need to be realistic in terms of whether or not you should actually be sitting the exam now, or if there is genuinely just too much taking your attention away from studying for the exams. And maybe it's actually better for you to push it to the next round rather than doing it right now if you genuinely don't believe that you've prepared enough, or whatever it is. I just think that it can be tough when there's a lot happening, and you shouldn't beat yourself up because of it. And I wish that I was kinder to myself, and I think that would have made studying easier, the anxiety lower, and knowing that everyone's kind of in the same position. Well, everyone is not in the same position, which is what I learned when I got to the assessment centers. But everyone is also having to go through the same volume of content that you also have to go through. And it was comforting for me to know that people who did have way more time than I did, even though they had more time, they also kind of struggled to get through all of the content in the time that they did. And then even when we did some tests, they felt like, okay, even though I did the test, I still feel like I'm missing information, or I thought I knew, but I didn't actually know when these questions came up. So I just think no one can know absolutely everything in every detail, but you'll have strengths in some subjects and weaknesses in others, but everything kind of balances out, and you can honestly only do your best. And I think when you are noticing that you're burning out, please slow down, because it's going to be very unhelpful and borderline detrimental to you if you come into those exams not even having the strength to do them properly. I'm gonna leave that there. Go back, I wish that I had minded my business. I wish I minded my business. I think definitely when I was starting to go to like group sessions that the university had put on for like revision, let me just say everyone is in a different position. Different people have different privileges, and other people have different resources. I think naturally we're all going into the exam being tested on the same content. So I just wish that I had spent less time comparing the amount of knowledge that I know with somebody else's level of knowledge, or their perceived knowledge in doing really well in these exams, and them having more time and resources, etc., to do things, and I just didn't. I also think that I wish that I just stopped, like slow down, chill, and respect the knowledge. I wish that I spent more time consolidating than I did actually doing the practice. I think because I've been working in law for a while, there are definitely some transferable skills that I can put into the exam. And I'd done one round of mock exams before the actual exams. So it wasn't like I was walking in blind or I had no idea on how to write. But I do think that had I spent more time consolidating, I would have felt more comfortable going into those exams. Every single detail, I do need enough to be able to advise a client on that particular topic. And I also need to know enough to advocate my client's case as well, or advise them in a way that's actually relevant to them. Again, just my opinion. Sorry, the work that you're doing is a massive undertaking. Please be kind to yourself during exam season. Please, continue to go on walks outside. Stretch your legs. Don't spend millions of hours in front of the screen or just doing mocks. Would strongly recommend having a look at the exemplars on the SRA website. I looked at the mock exams and the mock answers, the specimen papers and the specimen answers. That helped me really understand the level of detail and the style of writing that they could be looking for. Anyway, I am wishing you all the best in your exams. I'm sure you're gonna smash it. And yes, honestly, congratulations for even attempting to take this exam. It is life-changing. I hope my results go really well, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.